So I want to show you here a really, really interesting poll, which, highlights a narrative that I think I was onto before almost any other commentator in the game. So this is an Economist YouGov poll about the Democratic primary, and take a look at the results. This is who's getting more of the 2016 Trump voters. Who's getting more of those voters? Well, would you look at that? Tulsi Gabbard, 21%, number 1. Bernie, 15%, number 2. Yang, 13%, number 3. And then we get a big drop-off, and we get Steyer, 7%, Biden 6, Castro 6, Bennett 6. I can't believe Bennett has 6. Delaney 4. That's got to all be in Bennett's state. Delaney 4. What? Warren 3. Delaney is beating Warren. Goodness gracious. Buttigieg 3. Klobuchar 3. Bullock 2. Messam 2. I don't know how Bullock got 2. I don't know how Messam got 2. But anyway, you could say, hey, it's just one poll, so you don't know how, true it is. Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point. And also, I've generally tried this election season to stay a little bit more away from polls. I covered them more in 2016 than I do now because I don't want to fall into that same trap the mainstream media does, which is use it to push a narrative as you pretend like you're just describing a narrative. I don't want to do that, which is why I haven't covered many. But every now and then I see one that's so interesting to me that I can't help myself, and I have to cover it at least a little bit. So anyway, here we are. That's exactly what I'm doing now. But I wouldn't be surprised to see this reflected in more polls moving forward if they keep asking this question because, and Crystal Ball pointed this out on Twitter of Rising, she's like, well, these are the 3 candidates who have the strongest claim of being anti-establishment in the Democratic Party, and they're winning, and this busts up the narrative of, oh, what you need is, former Trump voters. To get them, you have to move to the right, and you have to be more conservative. And, you have to kowtow to them and abandon your own values and policy preferences. And that's just not true. In fact, what I've said for a long time now is, it's the populism, stupid. Strong populism holds the Democratic base, because they're incredibly populist, holds the actual lefties, okay? Gets independents, gets new voters, and chips away at the Republicans or former Republicans or Trump voters. But you have to be an actual populist. Now, Tulsi, for example, very interesting character. I have disagreements with her on, like, her healthcare bill, for example, but she is out there nonstop arguing against war. You cannot say that she's not sincere in wanting to end the Iraq war, wanting to end the Afghanistan war. You can't say that, her main issue isn't, as she says, quote, ending regime change war. So, wow, would you look at that? Ending war turns out to be very popular among former Trump voters who realize he's a charlatan and a con man and a fraud. And so that's why she's leading among them. Bernie, another guy who pushing for Medicare for all. There's one poll that shows 52% of Republican voters support Medicare for all. So that makes sense why Bernie's pretty high up there in terms of getting former Trump voters. The other thing is they look at somebody like Bernie, and when Bernie talks about how the whole system's corrupt, I don't take their big money. I only raise money from the people. We're doing a movement here. It's not me, it's us. These former Trump voters look at that and they go, okay, so this guy's the real deal. Trump ended up being a fake populist. This guy's the real deal. It's working. Andrew Yang. Andrew Yang has done such a fantastic job on this particular issue of talking former Trump voters off the ledge when it comes to immigration. Because Andrew says, hey, listen, don't be mad at, your neighbor who might have brown skin or black skin. You have to understand that the problem that's impacting your life in a negative way is not immigration. You have more in common with your immigrant brother than you don't. It's automation. So, your jobs are going. Now, there's a debate as to how much of it is outsourcing versus immigration, I think, or versus automation. Both of them are massively important, and both of them have negatively hurt the economy, outsourcing and automation. So I think it's both of those things, but his argument is, listen, don't blame people who you have a lot in common with, who are struggling to get by just like you. blame basically the machines. I sound like Bill O'Reilly. He used to say that on his show. The machines are coming. But blame the fact that a lot of these jobs are going away permanently because we're moving towards automated systems. And for some reason, that's been a light bulb moment for a lot of former Trump voters where they go, you know what? That's a good point that, hey, now I go to the store and I see the automatic checkout and I see half the staff is laid off at the Walmart or whatever it might be. And they go, wow, maybe that is the problem. And it allows them to have a lot more class consciousness than they did before. And the oldest trick in the book is the elites, the ruling class, gets working class white people to blame working class black and brown people for their problems. It's divide and conquer. Hey, look over there. Isn't it the immigrants' problem? The immigrants got no money, no power, and they're struggling to get by. But isn't it the immigrants' fault that you're hurting right now and you're not doing too well? Actually, no, it's not. It's that the rules are rigged in favor of the corporations and rigged in favor of the billionaires and the rich. And you're taking all the money and running out the back door, and everybody else is struggling. So, but it's great that he was able to come in there and say, no, don't blame them, blame automation. So that was a light bulb moment for a lot of former Trump voters. And as long as they feel like somebody's actually fighting for them, they're willing to vote for them. So Andrew Yang, he's a Democrat, but he's leading on, I believe in UBI, Universal Basic Income. And a lot of former Trump voters go, oh, well, I think $1,000 a month will help me massively. Now, again, we can get into details and specifics, and I could say, hey, I don't agree with exactly how he constructed his UBI, and that's all an open and fair conversation. But what I think is not debatable is that what he's doing is converting former Republicans, which is a wonderful thing. And that's the ultimate takeaway from this story that I wanted to, stress here. It's, guys, this is a good thing. If there's anything that I could get the left, if I could get the left to believe this, my job is done. And that is take yes for an answer. So when you're trying to convert people and somebody goes, yeah, you got me, that's not the time for you to turn around and be like, well, you used to be bad and wrong, therefore, I don't want to convince you. Because people will use, I've heard people use the fact that Tulsi and Yang convert former Republicans, use that against them. Like, oh, you're getting a lot of Republican support. But she's not getting Republican support by saying, I now agree with the Republicans on everything. She's getting Republican support by staying true to her own values. Now, again, I disagree with Tulsi on some issues, and that's fine, and that's fair game. But if she's out there and she's putting front and center, ending regime change wars, and then that brings in Republicans, there's no problem with that at all. That's a positive thing. That's a wonderful thing. If Andrew Yang gets people to stop hating immigrants and gets people to be in favor of a universal basic income and other, left-wing ideas, that's a good thing. And Bernie's doing it as well, guys. He's number 2 on the list. And he's doing it because he's genuine, because he's honest, because he's uncorrupted, because he really means it, and because he never stops fighting for people. So, again, take yes for an answer if you're on the left. If you're converting people, good. Now, again, it might be that when you convert somebody, at first you only get them on 1 or 2 issues. Give it time, man. Give it a year. Give it 2 years. Keep making your case. Keep putting your arguments out there for all to see. Engage with them. And then eventually, maybe they'll go, I only used to agree with you on 1 or 2 things. Now I'm kind of like 92% in agreement with you, and I only have minor disagreements with you on the edges. That's all a good thing. That's not something to attack somebody for. That's something to commend somebody for. If it's Tulsi, if it's Yang, if it's Bernie, these are the only 3 that are really seriously doing it. If it's these people converting former Trump voters, again, take yes for an answer. And here's a prediction. You would have never, well, it's not really a prediction. It's just describing what I think is the case. You wouldn't have gotten Mitt Romney voters this way. Because there were many Trump voters, particularly in the distressed areas in the Rust Belt, who did roll the dice on him. And they didn't necessarily agree with him on everything. He went too far in many ways. But they rolled the dice on him and said, hey, maybe he'll bring the jobs back. I don't think that's the same block as the Mitt Romney voters, the Thurston Howell III voters. I think that the Mitt Romney voters are a lot more elitist and out of touch and a lot more TFG than some Trump voters in the Rust Belt there. So that's why you see Tulsi, Bernie, and Yang chipping away and getting that crossover Trump support. And isn't it interesting that in many ways, particularly with Bernie, it's like he's proving what my case has been forever, which is, no. Stay true to your message. Fight for your populist left ideas, your social democratic ideas. Show everybody how uncorrupted you are and that you care about them. And you're going to hold the left base, and you're going to get those crossover voters from the right. That's exactly what's happening. So, again, the whole notion from the establishment of, well, you got to run to the left in the primary and then run to the right in the general and be moderate. No. What if you just didn't pivot and saw what happened? No pivot, which, by the way, they call a pivot, I call lying. You said one thing in the primary, now you're going to say another thing in the general. What if you just told the truth and said it as you see it every step of the way? Well, we know what would happen. What would happen is Tulsi, Bernie, and Yang leading among, former Trump voters and getting them on our side. I'm sorry, but if you think that that's a bad thing, you are fighting to try to permanently make left-wing ideology its own little subculture. And we don't want to be a subculture. We want to win. We want to be the culture, and we want to fix the problems in the country. So I'm not in the business of just throwing bombs at everybody who I disagree with or who might be savable. I'm in the business of convincing people, not changing our values and our policy preferences, not changing that, not compromising that at all, but sticking to our values and changing minds. And believing in redemption, I think, is an important thing. Believing that people are savable and changeable in terms of their ideology. That's all a positive thing. So I welcome all these former Trump voters, and I'm happy that they changed their mind. And the more we keep hammering away on the message that works, the more we will change more of their minds. And again, that's an absolutely wonderful thing, not a bad thing.